Drop step is the main method we used for developing power in our punches. It was taken from Jack Dempsey's book. Bruce Lee really referred to a lot of Jack Dempsey's stuff quite a bit. And the idea is that just like any way a person in the major sports develops power, like throwing a ball or whatever, you have to learn to sink your weight into the movement. So whether you're throwing a straight lead or a rear straight, your body has to drop. And this is sometimes kind of a little bit hard for people to learn. People will tend to lock themselves up and try to throw the punch from the arm and maybe from the waist. So the idea is, a drop step is just basically the timing between when you take a step and letting that falling of your weight, the sinking of the mass of your body, ending up on the end of your punch. So if I take a step with my right foot, I'm putting that weight on the end of my punch. If I step and I punch before my foot hits the ground, then the timing's off. So this is the way we develop this. You just want to work this until you start to feel that the step itself is generating more power. So as my foot touches the ground, my weight sinks into the leg, and my punch is extending through. And see, I'm starting this from a neutral position so that we can practice this from both sides. There may be different situations where I would step with my right hand and my right foot to generate power with my right hand. There might be times that I step with my right foot to generate power with my left hand. So we'll practice this on all sides. Take a step with my right foot, and I'm hitting. Take a step with my right foot, hit with my left. Same basic idea. Notice as my foot touches the ground, there's that second of the sink and rotate of the hip on that one. So I'm hitting across on the opposing pad. So step with the right foot to the right hand, right foot to the left hand. Okay. I may also step with the left foot to generate power for the right hand. Okay. So again, you want to fall onto the leg there as you're taking the step. And then you'll take a step with the left to generate power with the left hand. So as I'm stepping forward from the natural stance, I'm stepping and generating power there. So the idea is every time your weight sinks, you're adding that weight. The sinking, the falling of your mass should end up on the end of your fist. So practice this a few times on each hand, okay? And then what we've done is we have another drill that helps you really get the feeling, because when you take a small step, it can be sort of hard to time it at first. So you take a little step, the timing is very precise. So what we'll do is we'll let the person take a much higher step. When you take the large step, this is actually not completely unrealistic, because sometimes you will use this off of a kick or off of a jam. And so there are times this is useful, but in the way we're doing it here, it's just a training method so that as you get the feel that you're dropping your power into it, you can then shorten it up a little bit later and get the timing for the small step. So I'm going to lift, and primarily I do this off of the lead leg because there's not a lot of times I'd lift my left leg and leave it up there in front, my rear leg, I should say. So lift, and I'm hitting. Lift, and then fall. Okay. And this is where you can really tell your timing. If I hit again, after my foot has hit the ground and all the sinking has happened, I'm only hitting with the hand. So this is where you can kind of teach yourself. And your partner can be a very big help here. He sees what I'm doing, I lift the foot. If I land first, he says, okay. You know, it kind of gives you that little fix, or that little awareness that you need. But you can know easily when you're hitting, because you should be able to feel when your weight is behind it. Now, the biggest mistake people make is by falling too far. If your back is at this position here, you've gone too far. The idea isn't to lean into your strike. It's to let the step just sink weight onto your lead hand. So be very careful going between the proper And the improper technique, you can see there's a difference in the line that the body makes. So don't let your leg bend too far. Don't fall so that you're leaning and your face is open to attack. So here it is. I'm going to lift, and I hit as I come down. Lift, hit as I come down. And so just as my foot's hitting the ground, that is when my hit is, my punch is driving to the target. So for number 3, we're going to do the reaction drills for this. Now, you got to get the first 2 down first. You got to really get the feeling, because when you start reacting, that's when it's hardest to do proper technique. This is when you'll mess up a little bit. So the idea is, if Steve flashes the right hand from the neutral position, I'm going to step and hit, and he's only going to hold this for like a 1/1000 count, because the idea is if it's a reaction and I'm really preparing, and then that's the idea is it's no longer a reaction. It means my reaction is too slow. He'll let me know by removing the pad. Be careful though with your elbows. You don't hyperextend if you do miss. So as he puts the pad up, boom, I'll step and hit. Now I'm hitting cross pad again. Okay, so if I'm hitting with the right hand, my right foot is stepping and I'm hitting on his right hand. Okay, if he's holding up the left, I'm going to step out, hit with the left hand, his left hand. So it's the cross position once again. Now from here, I can also, you need to make sure your hands are correct, but you also will start mixing up the steps, which foot you're going to step with. So if he does this, I can step with the right. If he does it again, I can step with the left, but also be hitting with the right hand. Okay, so as he flashes the pad, step and hit, and try to make sure that you're doing this with as little response time as possible. So as little thought as possible. Now this is hard because you're going to have to make a decision what step you're going to take. In a fight, many times that's already kind of planned out for you because of what technique you've just finished. So as he puts the pad up, I take the step, boom, I'm hitting. He puts the other pad up, I may step with the same foot. I'm hitting with the rear hand this time. So he flashes the pad again. Okay, and so the idea is to get to it so it's to get to the point where it's feeling natural. And it's hard because as you're trying to react, you tend to try to guess, and then you can throw yourself off balance. That's what makes the drill so beneficial. So as you sort of are waiting for this, try to stay relaxed and make it an easy movement. And the better you get at it, the more fluid you should feel. Okay, now I should also explain that you start out exaggerating, like we did with the big step. Even the steps we're doing now are a bit exaggerated because we're practicing really getting into the drop step. When you're in your stance in a fight and you do this step, it should just be part of your movement. You're working this into the push shuffle or your lead step and strike, where you might do a step and return. So at that point, it should not look like you're doing a technique as opposed to just you're stepping and hitting. When you step in and you get inside with one of these, always think about also, what am I going to do next? Because the good fighter is always going to be prepared to move, not to be standing in front. You can't you're never guaranteed the strike. Okay, we say that over and over again. So just because I'm throwing a wonderful punch doesn't mean I'm going to land it. So I throw this beautiful punch, boom, I don't want to be in a position where I'm standing here and then I kind of get back. So when you do this, you're stepping and you're always ready to move again. If I do it on the other side, and you're just ready to step off the line, circle, or whatever makes sense in that moment. When we're practicing from this natural stance, this is actually many times the way you're going to be standing. If somebody just attacks you without any provocation or just without your knowledge, you're not always going to have the benefit of being on guard and have your body perfectly angled off. So if I'm sort of standing here and I see that he's hitting, if I want to intercept, I may step forward with that. And that little step from here is actually realistic in this sort of situation. And it will give you, even a small step can give you the difference between just a punch and a knockout punch or a very devastating punch. And so from here, when you take that shot, you take that punch, you want to make sure that you are also ready. The moment you hit, that would be when you start to move around. See, I'm already here, I'm sort of relaxed, boom, I hit, and now I have to get quickly into a position where I'm sliding off the line and I'm ready to follow up with my counterattack. Now we use the heel-toe sway to generate power in our lead hook. And it's kind of hard to explain in a document, in an article. It's because it's sort of the way the weight is distributed and all that, it's just easier to show. So when I throw a hook, you know, typically the way we're standing, technically everything's 50-50 in Jeet Kune Do, right? We have our weight distributed, but that shifts. And many times when you're throwing a hook, it's right after a cross, or you've just thrown a hook, a lead that may distribute some of the weight to the lead foot. Now, even if it's 50-50, this works, but I like to, you get a lot of power if you've got a little bit more, maybe 70-30 or 60-40 of the weight on the front foot. But as I throw this hook, I'm just pushing off the toes, and this is where people get confused. They see us driving off our lead foot, and as the hip rotates over, they see this heel come up, they think that we're pivoting. This is not a pivot. This is where the heel-toe sway explains a lot. If you understand it's not a pivot, it's a completely different technique. You're driving your weight to your rear foot, and your shoulders are rotating, see, as I drop the weight onto the rear foot. So as I'm ready to throw this hook, I'm starting to sink as my rear heel drops and I'm rotating over. So as I take this shot, I'm going to drive off of my lead foot and sink my rear heel. And this is a quick pop of the heel coming down. The faster you pop and the harder you drive off the lead leg, the more power you're going to generate into the torque of your hook. So the weight is a little bit forward maybe, or even 50-50, and boom, I'm dropping that weight back, and then I would come right back into position. Boom, and I'm right back into position after I throw the hook. So I drive back, boom, throw the hook, weight drops on the heel, and again, I'm not pivoting, even though it may look like it to some people. I'm just driving the weight off, and as my hip turns, the foot may turn with it. But that's not the driving force, okay? And then as I hit, I immediately pop back with my weight distributed 50-50. Okay, the sudden drop is when it's almost like you're lifting your legs up off the ground. Because the idea is when you sink, as fast as you want to sink using your muscles, because your muscles are going to have some resistance in them, you cannot move as fast as gravity will pull you down. So what we do is we just try to lift our feet about 2 inches as we bend our legs, as we relax the muscles. So as this is done, see, my weight drops. You have to let the legs relax, because if you just lift your legs, you'll get sort of a weird feeling like you're just dropping to sort of a horse stance. The idea is keep your legs relaxed and supple. Boom, you let them bend, and you fall. We use this in many different situations, but the way it works with the heel and toe sway is all of that drop would be on the rear foot. Boom. So as I want to sink into that rear foot, that's how you're going to create that sudden quick drop of the rear heel to generate the power. So let me show this with a hook real quick. Okay, if I'm just sinking and rotating with the hook, I can generate a lot of power. I'm just going to kind of lean back, and I can hit pretty hard with that. But the idea is the faster your weight transmits or transitions to the rear foot, the more explosive pop you're going to have, and that's what you want. So it's the idea of a bullet again. A bullet is not very dangerous unless it moves fast. So whatever mass you have, you want to accelerate that into the target. And the faster you pop and you drop in that position, the quicker the torque, the quicker the shot's going to be. So now that we've done it with just a quick, just sort of a drop and rotate, a normal one, I'm going to do that with the pop of really sinking into my heel. Okay. And so from there, boom, as you pop, you still want to drive yourself back up. I'm kind of pausing so you can see that back pop there. When you do it properly, you come right back up onto your feet again. This is especially noticeable when your punch starts from a close range. If I'm if I'm right here, this is his face, so this would be like me hitting him from right here. When we throw a cross, you can tend to get away with kind of just torquing all your weight because you have this wind up, and that's beautiful. When you're close though, if I just rotate from here, it's a lot harder to get torque from because it's a small amount of distance to build up momentum. So if I want to go from here and I'm going to just drop, I want to have that quick sudden pop that sudden drop gives you, and that's what's going to generate the power. Okay, if I was just trying to do this with kind of a rotation, you can see it's a lot harder to generate the power. So you need that quick, sudden movement that the sudden drop gives you, and that's going to be, it's going to give you that sudden thrust. And that's exactly how the 1-inch punch is done. So just a quick comparison, when a person drops in the 1-inch punch, the reason most people can't do it is because people try to fall into it. So when you have that quick drop, it gives you that quick acceleration that you need for a small amount of movement to generate a lot of power. The shoulder rotation is extremely important too. Now, so when you add all these things together, there's all these little scientific elements that create the most powerful punch you can have. So the sudden drop is that pop that you get, and when you rotate, what you're doing when you do the shoulder rotation, what you're doing is you're getting all the core muscles, to the big muscles of the body, to be involved in that shot. Remember, Bruce Lee was not a very big person. People said he hit like a heavyweight, though. He learned to use every ounce of his being behind each punch. So if I'm throwing a rear straight, and I'll show you with my right hand here, what I have to work with people many times is people will either lock their shoulders here and punch with the arm, and they don't get a very good punch compared to what they could have with the proper technique, or people tip their shoulders and one shoulder is lower than the other. So as that weight is dropping, your shoulders should rotate on the same horizontal plane, and you're using the forward weight or the sinking weight to accelerate the rotation of the shoulders, and that will drive your punch out. And notice, this is very clean because this hand comes straight to the face and I'm running right down the center line. So the shoulder rotation keeps you also from staying open. So when I come down this line, boom, I'm closed up for a second as far as being able to counterattack, the opponent being able to counterattack, and then I'm coming right back on that line again. So from here, step shoulder rotation, is that hit. Notice the shoulders, I'll even do this slow without a step, just using the shoulders. You can see that all the muscles in the body, all the core muscles are throwing this punch as opposed to an arm, right? So here, using the rotation, hit that. Okay, same thing goes with the hook. When we throw the hook, we had that heel-toe sway, the sudden drop, and what really adds the power now is the rotation of the shoulder also. Because if I drop and do all that stuff, but I don't rotate the shoulder, then you're still not getting a very good punch. So as I sink that weight back, I'm going from here, okay, and then the shoulders are, boom, rotating across the center line. I should be looking right over my forearm, right over the center of it. So in other words, once I hit Steve, that's the depth of the follow-through I'm aiming for, not over here. I'm not trying to go, right? Not trying to go here. So even though the shoulder rotation, everything is on a controlled, nice, clean plane. It's here, boom, and then you're right back to center again. So I throw this hit, I'm going to sink my weight forward, okay? And let's say I've just finished throwing across, so you can see this. I'll make this a little bit longer of a punch so you can see the movement. So the short one, same idea. But let's say I finished across. I'm going to rotate this in and through. Boom, and see I'm looking over the forearm. You're going to generate a lot of follow-through, a lot of power in this, so you have to be in control of the arm not following through too far, which means right as I get here, I snap that elbow down, okay? And I'm back here again, see? So I'm in. Notice the rotation of the shoulder. And notice how quickly my hand gets back to center. So when you throw a straight punch or the hook, I mean, this idea that when you throw a punch, it's almost like your hands are connected with a chain, that you're pulling on one. One hand should come back always to cover the chin, okay? And your shoulder is always covering as well. If I throw a hook, it's the same idea. The moment I throw that hook, this one's driving back. If I throw a straight lead, if I throw a rear straight, that's when it really becomes important because you're changing sides. That means my face is open to attack the longest if I don't cover. So the idea is like I'm pulling a lever, which is driving this rear hand out, but that lever should come right to your chin, right to the side. And your shoulder, your rear shoulder at this point should be covering the other side of your chin. So if I'm throwing that cross from here, I'm pulling this back, and see from here, I'm covering this line. So this comes here, boom, right here, because he's going to be throwing his counterattack. So here, I step in, and this is covering the chin right away, and then boom, whatever you're going to do, as soon as this is finished, this hand comes back to the chin, lead hand returns to its beginning position. So boom, and then back. The chain analogy really becomes interesting when you're doing a negative positive, because as I'm throwing the one, and I'm not going completely full out on the first one, and the second one comes up, it's very easy for people to leave their hands sort of in limbo. So it's here, it's going, and this hand should right away, that idea of pulling the chain and getting the other hand out. So think about that. Visualization really helps when you're training, because sometimes when you're not getting it, you put a little visual kind of cue in there for yourself, and your brain will start to focus on it in a different way. So I may do negative, positive, or I may do positive, negative, positive. So I may go, and either way, see, the hand has to come back to the face every time. So really focus on that when you do the negative, positive, or anything, but this is when you'll start to really notice how this comes into play. Now you probably picked this up from watching this so far and from just reading many of the things that we talk about, that the torque from the body is very important. And when we throw our punches, man, hip torque, the core muscles are very engaged. It is the core, just like the core muscles are the core of our punching power. And what we use is a medicine ball in a drill like this. And I started this drill, I came up with this drill for my own class because I saw it was so hard to get people off of that idea of throwing the punch with their arm. I mean, the arm is the weapon, right? The weapon doesn't do all the work itself. So people will take the weapon, it's like taking a sword and telling the sword to go, hit somebody. Your arm is the weapon, and the body is the driving force. Okay, so as I hit, I'm telling my body to dig in, to use my toes, to drive from the ground. And I was really trying to put into place some of the things that Bert Poe showed me about digging in the ground and using the whole force. And I would see people out, one after another, using the arm, or they would rotate and then punch, and it just wasn't connected. So when you use the ball, a medicine ball like this, you're learning to take a known movement and you're tacking on what you're trying to use, and that's the quickest way to learn something. So if you're already used to moving or torquing with something, we try to emulate the movement itself that we're trying to get good at. Now, the danger at first of doing a drill like this is you have to be careful that you let go of the ball in the right area. If you let go of it too late, it's going to go through the wall. Let me explain the drill. You're going to start from one side and you're going to torque through. You want to do enough of these that you almost try to surprise yourself so that you don't know the difference between when you're going to punch and when you're going to torque the ball. So this is why I say that it's dangerous if you're not paying attention, because at one point as I torque this hard, I'm going to try to really whip this through. At one point, okay, I'm going to let go. Now I'm going to hit with my palm, because generating this much force, especially if you're not used to it, you can really hurt your hand. So as I come off of this, I'm going to drop the ball, boom, and I'm going to hit with the palm. Now what I was saying before is that sometimes people are so excited about doing this, they let the ball continue on when they let go. This is what you got to really focus on. There's an area right beneath you, and as you're torquing, at one point, just as I start, I just let go, okay? And I'm going to continue. I don't throw the ball at all. I just let it go, straight down. So here's what happens. This is a 12-pound medicine ball. And this one has handles, which is pretty nice. You can also use the ones where you're just using your palms. Just be careful. And you drive through fast and hard. So once again, driving. And see, the idea is you decide sort of at the split second when you're going to do the punch. You shouldn't be planning too much ahead, because the idea is you actually start the movement. And as you start the movement, you're actually torquing with the ball, and then you let it go. That movement has already been created, and it's actually too late for your mind to screw up the punch. Now, the idea behind a drill like this is once you've done a few, you try to emulate that without using the ball. You have to think of it. Try to get yourself back in that state where you had the ball there for a second, You're using it, visualize, and then you do the same rotation. And I'm throwing the same hook. So once I do that, you're developing knockout power. This gave my class, the people I was working with when I developed this, and over time, the other people I've used helped with this drill. You could tell it jumped them from a level where they just weren't breaking through to having a punch that was maybe 10 times more powerful than they had in a matter of 1 or 2 classes. The drill is very important. Be very careful with the medicine ball. Make sure that you're taking care of your back and everything. But this is just a drill that we use to develop torque and power using the core muscles. Now, one thing that we talk about quite a bit when we're developing our punches is posture. One of the things that Burt Poe used to tell us was that a powerful puncher should have bad posture. That doesn't mean you have to walk around with bad posture, but it does mean that when you're striking, your shoulders should have a sort of collapsed look. You're kind of hunched over, and when you're throwing like a hook, you'll notice that everything is protected and is sort of really closed in on itself. It also is a sign of somebody that's very aware of their space as a striker, because if I'm here and I'm fighting, I'm also much more open. And when you punch, you notice that people tend to throw from here, the back is straight, and you don't have the right posture for power. I tend to think of it as a spring that's coiled for power. When you throw a punch from here, the idea is your whole body is coiled. That's what we call loaded, when your muscles have just enough weight on them that they're ready to explode from. If you're all the way completely straight, you have nowhere to go. You've already uncoiled the spring. So if I'm throwing any punch from here, maybe let's say a straight lead. I'm in this position, and I'm hitting, right? From here, I'm uncoiling the spring. What really facilitates this is what Dennis Blue calls the 2% tuck, where you just got your body torqued just a little bit over center. So the idea is that you want to have the midsection tucked in and over. It's like when you're lifting weights. They always tell you to take your abs and flex them so that you don't explode out the back when you're lifting weight. This is bad technique. A good technique would be to have yourself over center. You want your ribs tucked in a sense. And so if you do take a strike, you've got all this crunched over. It's sort of a mild crunch where you're flexing a little bit. Not really flexing, but you're activating the muscles. And so if you take a strike, you're already a little bit protected, and this is what helps you to develop the striking power from there. Another example of using this posture as well as the drop step is the downward smash from Xin Yi, actually. And we'll show you a few ways of doing this. The idea is that you're dropping your weight and you're smashing with the hand, with the palm as it snaps forward. So one of the ways that you may practice this is you're stepping through. You may be in a left lead, stepping through, bringing both hands up, very kung fu looking, right? And as you come in, boom, you're going to smash straight down. This works that drop step, and it's actually useful when you have somebody's head there or you're just coming down on somebody's face maybe. So I take that step through, and I'm taking that pop. Okay? Then the other one would be that I'm just taking a step through and I'm not bringing it any higher than my head. It should be a little bit more natural. So as I bring this up, I'm just coming up and I'm taking that pop. Okay, the next one would be a lot more close, a little bit more realistic. And again, it all comes down to the sync of your body, because now I have no momentum to build up from up here. So I'm just going from here, and I'm going to sink my body into this. Boom, you're dropping your weight. You could use the sudden drop in this, right? So as I bring the hand up, I got the person's head or whatever. From here, you're just going to sink and pop that strike off. One more time. From here, and you take that shot. And the posture comes into play because you're basically dropping into your sternum. I mean, this whole posture thing is very, very important, because if you notice, if I try to do this straight, there's not going to be anywhere near the power. Part of the dropping power comes from the curving, that tucking of the body as you sink into it. Because I could use just the weight, I can use the weight and the curvature of the core, that tucking in on yourself. Boom. Okay? And that's what creates that power. Now the palm hook is a very devastating strike. You're using the palm in the same manner that you'd be using the fist on a hook. And the progression is basically the same. You'd start with the heel toe sway, and that drives that weight going back towards your rear foot. Use the drop to sink yourself into it, the hip and shoulder rotation, and then right at the end, you're going to pop your hand right here. This pop from the wrist creates the last amount of that concussion or that power that's going to drive through. And it's very important, especially from close range, when you don't have time to load up with one punch and then follow through. This one's coming from here, and that little pop is what's driving all of the power and adding that last little bit into the target, similar to the 1-inch punch, the way the hand would pop in with the bottom 3 knuckles driving through. So if I do this real quick from here, you'll notice without bringing the hand back, I'm going from here. You'll see me sink, rotate the shoulders and the hips, and then the hand will pop, and we'll change the angle a little bit so you can see this as well. So from here, that's a pretty powerful pop. We'll take it from this angle. Same idea. I'm just going from here, taking that rotation over, and that nice little pop. And when you do this one, the palm hook, you don't necessarily have to get everything in a perfectly horizontal line, the shoulder, the elbow, and the hand. It still can happen, and that's perfectly fine. Some people have trouble getting their wrist around on that, so you can do it a little bit more with the elbow down. And it's a little more direct from this angle. If I'm here, boom, and I just want to take this guy and quickly take the shot, sometimes trying to get into a clean, proper-looking hook is going to waste a little bit more time than you need, than you would like to. So from here, take that rotation, sink, rotate everything through, and that little pop just by itself adds, so it adds some power to the end. So from here, I'm taking that pop over, and you can see that drives a lot of torque and a lot of power through the strike. See, one of the little cheats, and actually Bruce Lee did this, and I haven't seen a lot of people talk about it, but the idea is when you leave your hand here and the body moves first, see, by that progression we talked about the heel to straight and everything moving first. Sometimes people will think you're pulling off if they watch, and I've been accused of this before, where you see your body move first, it looks like you're trying to bring your hand back this way, but it's not. As long as your hand stays there on the line, what it does is it creates an elastic sort of tug right through the muscles here. And so when you rotate, that elastic tug then whips the arm through and creates a lot more power. If I did it simultaneously, the whole movement together, you don't get that elastic tug that snaps the arm through. Simultaneous, you can get pretty good power. With the elastic tug, it goes whoop, boom. See, the first part, whoop, boom, and then that pops through at the end. So try that slowly. Try to feel as you leave your arm there, that little tug that wants to pull the arm through, okay? Then as you get that, you can try it a little more fast. And that's where the power comes from. We hope you've enjoyed the first power punching guide and videos. And stay tuned, we've got a lot more coming.